don't miss another update.
Namaste, and I welcome all of you to this episode. And I have with me a very interesting person, and we are going to have a very interesting session with this very interesting person. Her name is Dr. Melissa Kapoor, and she is known to you as English Bahen. Namaste.
Namaste, Sanjay ji. Namaste, everyone.
And let me introduce Melissa to you. I mean, she is not just an ordinary person. She has a doctorate from the Oxford University, the creme de la creme. And from there, she began her journey into Sanatana Dharma. And I think it is best that we hear from her how she began her journey into Sanatana Dharma. Ji.
Thank you, Sanjay ji, and thank you very much again for inviting me onto this session. It really is a huge honor. So yes, my journey to Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, it started about six years ago when I first met my husband. I must admit, before then, I knew the word Hinduism, but literally that was it, because in school, it never came up in the religious studies classes. We studied all the major religions, so Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Sikhism, Buddhism, but not Hinduism. So I knew the word, as I said, and I even had two school friends, very close friends, who are Hindus, but it never came up in conversation that they were Hindus. So I really knew nothing about it. And then I met my husband, and gradually I came to learn a bit more. After we got engaged and I first visited Bharat, I absolutely fell in love with it. Obviously, at first it was falling in love with it on a sort of a superficial level. It was falling in love with, you know, the gorgeous weather, the fantastic food, all the singing and the dancing, and just so much life. I felt it just exuberates life in Bharat, and that's just so different to in the UK, where life is actually, it feels quite grey in comparison, partly because of the weather. It literally is grey, but just the attitude as well feels very grey. People don't celebrate life so much. But then obviously having my Vedic wedding, and then learning more and more about Hinduism. Initially, you know, my husband showing me part aspects and, you know, us celebrating the major festivals together, but then I myself becoming more and more interested in it off my own back and proactively wanting to learn more. It happened very gradually, and before I knew it, I felt I had completely imbibed the philosophy of Sanatana Dharma, and it was resonating so much with me, just so easily. And when I would be watching the Vedanta lectures before going to sleep at night, it was like the knowledge, the wisdom would just soak into me so effortlessly. And it would have such an impact on my mental health, my mental well-being, on my attitude to life, the way I saw the world. And it just had such positive impacts on me that before I knew it, I just realized I am Hindu, and I really want to learn more and more and embrace this lifestyle and this philosophy even more and learn even more. So it was a very gradual process of self-discovery and realization, I guess. It was certainly no forced, no, it was never forced on me in any way like that. It was a genuine search. And ultimately, that is what Sanatana Dharma is. It's a search. We're seeking the truth. And my own journey to that has been very true to that. It's been a search for the truth.
So were you able to make out any difference between the believing religion and the seeking religion, like the Sanatana Dharma? Did it strike you as something very, very profound?
Absolutely. I'd say it's pretty much one of the central differences. So coming from a Christian background, I'm very aware that people here, they live in fear. They may not realize it, but that is actually how our lives are governed. And it stems from, you know, the thousands of years or hundreds thousands of years, in the UK certainly, of living under the church where the king kept people poor and the church kept people stupid. That was their pact, essentially, to rule the population.
Okay.
And it was very effective. People lived in fear. They abided by these 10 commandments. So it was a way to very simply control a population. Even when your scientific observations are telling you this is incompatible with the truth, it forced you to believe in these blind faith things just out of fear, because otherwise your belief was that you would be damned to an eternity in hell, facing all the horrors that you can imagine. So it really was a very effective controlling mechanism. And I feel that attitude, it lingers on even today. In the West, growing up going to school here in the UK, people are always, as children, we were always scared to put our hands up and answer a question in case we got the answer wrong. There is this fear of being wrong, of not knowing the answer, of doing the wrong thing. Whereas in Bharat, I find people are so questioning. In fact, that was one of the reasons why I so fell in love with my husband, was he was so inquisitive. He was always wanting to know why and how. And I find that's a real amazing aspect of Hindus, is they're so inquisitive. And it comes from this background of seeking the truth, that it's the most important intrinsic part of life, is to seek the truth.
Didn't you face any resistance from your family, from your parents and your friends when you decided to become a Hindu? Because as far as a Hindu marriage is concerned, or marrying a Hindu is concerned, there is no obligation on you to become a Hindu. You could stay Christian and still marry a Hindu. That was possible. So
Absolutely.
didn't you receive any kind of a resistance?
So from my immediate family, absolutely not. I mean, there were, I think, a few concerns about, the way it would impact maybe on my lifestyle, but it wasn't as if it would be a Hindu imposition. It might just be like the setup of the family unit, perhaps the idea that I might move to India and be so far away. It was more sort of practical aspects, I think, than an actual fear. But when I look beyond my immediate family, so for example, one of my grandparents, very strongly Catholic, she had concerns, and in fact I didn't speak to her for about the first 3 or 4 years after I got married, because she said she didn't want to talk to me anymore. And I felt there was actually no loss to me particularly. It was more of a loss to her. She's living on her own, very lonely. It was very sad, but she still talks to me now. But the thing is, that's her reaction to me marrying a Hindu. But at the same time, that same reaction occurred actually when my parents got married. She didn't approve of the marriage because my mum was a Protestant. So it's just the nature of Christianity to be divisive, even within Christianity. I have to reflect on some of my school friends. So a couple of them are very strongly Christian. I must say the conversion efforts at some of the UK universities is very strong. So, before university at school, yes, they were Christian, but, they went to the Christmas services, nothing, a few times a year. But after university, or at university, that all changed. In Oxford, there's a very strong conversion front, particularly. And so I know there that they see me as, damned. And so I say that even they see their own parents as damned. I understand that they cry themselves to sleep at night because they believe in one sort of aspect of Christianity. I don't even know what the differences are myself, but their parents are of a different church. And so they think their parents are damned, even though they both believe in Jesus, and that, things are so different, obviously, from Hinduism. They still feel that slight difference is enough that they are damned. So they cry themselves to sleep at night, fearing for the well-being of their parents once they die, and it's just so divisive. So yes, I mean, there were a few reactions to me becoming a Hindu, but I'm so used to that happening even between families where they're all Christian anyway. So it was nothing very spectacular to me.
Okay, that's wonderful. But being a scientist, you must have evaluated the differences, the comparative religion studies that must have come to you quite naturally. And we know that the differences are quite stark, and they pervade the entire space. In fact, I divided them into basically six different units. And that is, first of all, the attitude to science, because science, as you know, you're a scientist, that basically started with what is universal, verifiable, repeatable, and now, of course, after Popper's theory, it is also has to be falsifiable. Only then it qualifies as science. And all these attributes are available within Sanatana Dharma. Then there, of course, the time concept, cyclical versus linear. Then, of course, is what we call the logic concept. And the logic concept in the Sanatana Dharma is very, very multi-valued, as opposed to the two-valued, right, wrong, okay,
Yeah.
damned or rescued or salvaged. And that, of course, happens because of the previous concept of linear time and the word as the final arbiter of truth.
Yeah.
Whatever is written in the scripture is final. There's no verifiability, repeatability allowed. You do that, you become a heretic. then, then of course, the cosmology. You've got the infinite cosmology, and you have the Christians and the Abrahamic religions have a very finite cosmology, which is unnatural. Epistemology in Sanatana Dharma, the Pratyaksha Pramana, the direct evidence, is the highest proof, and whereas word of scripture is the only proof in the Abrahamic religions. And then when we come to what is called eschatology, or the what is called the death theory, so here it is eternal, and there you just have one life. So I think that you must have found these differences, and you must have found them to be quite stark.
Absolutely. And it's strange that while I was a Christian, it never occurred to me that the idea of a religious book emerging after a person comes to earth just a few thousand years ago, and everybody who does not know his story and the word that he provides from God is automatically damned. Like, it never occurred to me that that is just complete, obviously, nonsense, because there have been so many millions of people who have lived before Jesus or Muhammad came to earth, so they were automatically damned because they hadn't yet received the word of God, and from Jesus, for example, or if they lived in a very remote place, they never had the opportunity to know about the Bible, again, they're automatically damned. Where you have someone like Hitler, who is a strong Christian but doing horrific things, ultimately that is the sort of person who probably would be eligible to go to the Christian heaven because he's been saying his prayers every day. He's not doing prayers to murtis or anything like that. So he's going to the Christian heaven, even though he's gassed millions of Jews and everything, all these atrocities. Yet a very good person who maybe they're very an advocate for animal welfare. They do really good things for the environment, for humanity, and they're not doing it with any ulterior motive or converting souls or anything. They're doing it genuinely to be a good person. If they don't believe in the Bible, just exactly how it is presented in one church, they go to hell. I mean, it's just so absurd now when I look back at it. And I must admit, when I look at some of my school friends, I do get the sense that they feel a sort of tension because they're all very intelligent girls. I went to a grammar school, so it's one of the very competitive schools. So they're very intelligent girls, and yet they're believing such nonsense, essentially. So I sense that there is a bit of tension there. And I must admit, when you just went through those 6 points, there's so many of these things I have found to be so empowering. I feel I'm such a stronger person because of it. I guess that is like the reflex almost to living in fear as a Christian. You then become empowered as a Hindu, as a seeker, you're empowered. And one of the ways is that, yes, we live on these absolutely absolutely massive timescales, these cyclical timescales. We live in this infinite universe, perhaps multiverses. It makes you realize that you, as an individual, you really are not the all be all and end all. You're such a small part of that. Yes, very importantly, you're on your own journey towards moksha, but it really helps put things into perspective, and it helps you to be brave. And in all of these ways, I personally feel I have benefited so much. And that's why I'm so passionate about speaking out about Hinduism and protecting it from all of the misinformation, all the lies that are out there about it, because it's done so much for me. And I know it could do so much for so many other people if only they knew about it. Because as I mentioned at the start, at school, I didn't know anything about Hinduism. I knew the word, but that was pretty much it. In fact, I would say like the only real impression I had of Hindus, and it's terrible, but it was from the Indiana Jones film, The Temple of Doom, where Hindus are portrayed in the most horrific way. And so there was a feeling of fear, actually. I think that was my only sort of instinct around what Hindus were, was that they were scary. And that's just so terrible, because nothing could be further from the truth.
Okay. Yeah. And then this constant living in fear, you must have felt absolutely liberated, because here, God, or whether you believe in the one Brahman or the various manifestations, they're your friends. Like
Yes,
Krishna can be your best friend.
absolutely.
And you don't have to be worried about anything. Life is a celebration here. I just, one day I was doing a category and I found, okay, let's describe these various religions in one word. And so I found Christianity means sin. Okay. And when you come to Islam, that means that, okay, next life, that, you suspend everything. You suspend your brains, you suspend your joys, you suspend everything, and try for the next life. This life is of no use. That defines Islam. Even in Buddhism, it's said it's suffering. That is the leitmotif there. And when it comes to Sanatana Dharma, life is a celebration every day.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't have a living religion. Actually, it's wrong to call it a religion. It is a dharma. Whereas dharma and karma are so closely intertwined that every minute can be a celebration, every moment can be a celebration. And that is why you have so many celebrations here. The people are celebrating almost every day. And that's why,
absolutely.
sometimes the Westerners, my friends, they come from abroad. They keep wondering, "Hey, what's going on?" I mean, every other day there is some festival or all. What is going on? We have only one, or at the most two or three. You can say, okay, Christmas, Easter, that's all.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, this attitude to there only being one life, and really you're living this life for the afterlife, it creates such an irresponsible society, because it means you're not so concerned about what your lingering impacts on this world. You're constantly thinking of this other place, be it heaven or hell, wherever you're going. So it just creates a very irresponsible society. Whereas if you realize that you're living this cyclical existence, that you're coming back, that there is this concept of karma, that is the essence then to sustainable living, to looking after the planet, to eating responsibly, to living responsibly, to unity between people and with animals. And so it really is very dangerous, the Christian and the Muslim attitude to existence. I feel it's very, it really could be the end of existence on this planet. It could destroy us all. I mean, fortunately in the UK, Christianity is dying out very, very quickly. I gave a few examples of some school friends, but they really are anonymous. They're not the usual. Let's put it that way. Most of the people who are attending church regularly, they are elderly people. They're in their 70s, 80s. There's no one behind them attending church anymore on a regular basis. So in 10, 20 years, it really is going to disappear. I mean, there are so many boarded up churches here in the UK that are just derelict, just falling up to pieces. And then that's why it's so terrible when I go to India and I see churches springing up all over the place. I mean, just before I sort of took this pact to this sadhana to do more work as English Bahen on social media and to protect Hinduism, it was partly in response to driving along one of the highways in Tamil Nadu and just seeing church after church after church after church. And I was just like, who is even attending these churches? There's nobody living here. We're just on the highway. And yet, then when you go to a city, again, you'll just see church, church, church. And it's just astonishing. And often these churches, they are on the best part of land. So when on our very last visit to Bharat, we visited my husband's, one of my husband's old schools. So he went to a Christian school. I think many middle-class Hindu children, they had a similar fate. They weren't a Christian family, but they felt that the Christian school was the best kind of school out there. But when you look at it, you understand why, because it's on like the prime piece of land on top of the hill with the glorious views and amazing facilities. So you can see, or another one was in Coimbatore. We went to Coimbatore recently, and again, the church was right in the center of the city in this like oasis of green. So how on earth have the churches managed to do this? And they've done it very, very cleverly. And unfortunately, they're still managing to do it. That's the real shame. I mean, a lot of these schools and everything, they came up during the British Raj and soon after, but we're so much later now, and yet colonialism obviously is still happening. It's just that the Indians are imposing colonialism on themselves and allowing it to happen, so many years after independence. So that really is such a sad thing, that absolutely colonialism is as strong, I feel, as it ever was in India.
You're absolutely right. In fact, that is why your kind of work and the mission that you've taken on is very important, because when people see you and learn from your experience, and they find that actually Christianity is dying out because it is so reason unfriendly. And Sanatana Dharma is moving up, especially in the West and among the younger people here in India, because it is so reason friendly. Yes. And yet this proliferation of this church planting, it's a scam basically to fool the Westerners, because they say that, okay, that we are going to go and plant so many church in India, and therefore you give us money. And it has become some kind of a money-making, money-siphoning scandal. And I think we have to educate people in the West not to give money to these scoundrels who are coming here, making fools of people. They convert them. They don't even change their name. They don't change their identity. And, they convert them multiple times, because they convert them once, then they lapse back because they haven't understood what they're being given. And that they have lived their life in a different kind of milieu. And then they slip back, then the same people, the same lot is converted back again. But they keep showing off, okay, so many churches have been planted, even if those churches have no service, they have nobody attending them, it doesn't matter. This is a scam being carried out to fool the Westerners, and I think we have to educate those donors who are kind of sustaining these evangelical misadventures, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, I like to actually try and make people realize the arrogance of what they're doing. They think they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, but when you realize you're imposing belief onto people where you have no proof, you can't prove that I'm damned, going to hell, so why be so arrogant to try to brainwash me into believing that? That's just your belief. Leave me alone. So yes, certainly there's that angle of trying to explain to Westerners, but there's also a lot, I feel, that Bharat, that India should be doing. And partly it can be done at the ground roots level, building more communities and more links to strengthening the Manda system and strengthening Hindus. That I feel a big role is in Hindu parents bringing up their children to be strong, resilient Hindus that will never be converted. It's just not possible if they're really grounded in Hindu faith. And when I see a lot of Hindu parents here in the UK, when we go gather for festivals, it's almost like they exclude the children. I've noticed that we'll be doing Durga Puja in the room, in the Manda, but the children are running around outside. Whereas when I look at my experience as a Christian growing up, the children either are sitting in the church with you, you're listening to the same sermon, and there are very clever ways that they're thinking up to bring children in. So I saw recently a poster advertising that children can bring in their pets. So they're bringing in their hamster in a little cage, their rabbit in a little cage, their dog. They're bringing them into church with them because they think that's exciting and, it's a day out almost. Or the alternative is they'll have a Sunday school room sort of attached to the church, and you're colouring in and listening to a sort of child-friendly version of whatever the sermon is going on in the church next door. So I think there really is an onus on Hindu parents to be trying to transmit their faith more effectively to their children, take it more seriously. So that's one angle, but obviously there's also the political angle. More needs to be done centrally and locally to be protecting Mandas, to be giving them the freedom to, not be bending backwards to accommodate churches and to allow their leases to continue to infinity and to be giving them all these benefits. So on so many fronts, work needs to be done. And it's going to be all of them, they all need to be done for it to ultimately happen. But the time is now. It really can't wait any longer, because when you look at the future generations of Hindus, and ultimately why I started being so passionate about speaking out, is it was in reaction to some of my experiences in Bharat, in India, among friends and family, where they're just taking Hinduism, they're not taking it seriously enough. They are emulating Christianity in the West so strongly. And being a Westerner, at first, it really made me cringe when I was seeing this happening, that I realized something has to be done to make Hindus wake up and see sense and understand the treasure trove of information and wealth of wisdom through their own scriptures, through their own traditions, that they shouldn't be emulating the West and copying them and being a second-rate copycat. They should be proud in who they are and transmitting that pride to their children.
That's a very good point you made. Absolutely wonderful point you made. And I request all my viewers to please ask questions to Dr. Melissa, if you will. And please do share, like, and subscribe the video. Press the bell icon. And whatever little you can contribute, that would be wonderful. You've always been doing, you've been wonderful. What's your action plan for future? Of course, you laid out quite a lot of that, but have you really worked it down to look at A, B, C, something like that? Well chalked out action plan?
A very good question. So, me personally, I can't wait to move to Bharat. In fact, we probably would be moving around now had it not been for COVID. So I'm really desperate to personally be living on the Mithi of India. So on a personal level, that's going to be really fulfilling for me. When it comes to the work that I'm doing for Hinduism, I must admit, I respond to the emerging situations in different ways. So on social media, I release videos, etc., and I've been writing some essays and everything recently. But one of the reasons why I was so pleased to be invited to speak with you today, Sanjay Ji, is because I feel collaboration really is the key. Hindus, they're very, it's a very odd paradox almost. They're very united when it comes to obviously the spiritual aspects. They realize they're all connected, they're all one. But quite often I find when it comes to actually getting things done, they often want to do their own thing in their own way. So it's quite difficult sometimes to come up with these collaborations where you bring people together, where you overlook maybe slight differences in opinions for the greater good, for the bigger picture. And I guess it comes from this heritage, this tradition of, you know, being a seeker and always wanting to find out the truth for yourself, where you compare it to the other religions, where, you know, they are told, they do as they're told. You know, they'll go to the mosque and then they'll vote exactly as they're told at the mosque. We don't have that concept in Hinduism. So Hindus, it's encouraged that we find our own truth, but at times that can come at the cost of us not being able to unite in certain ways. So I feel that collaboration of people really is key. So, for example, on this aspect of Christian conversions, as I mentioned, it's a multi-front approach we need to take. So we need to be joining up these different aspects, you know, stopping the Westerners from coming in the first place and educating them. We also need to be strengthening Hindus themselves, and then we need to take the sort of domestic political front as well. So all these things need to happen, but they need to happen in concert with each other. So that requires collaboration. So I personally am very keen to be building collaborations between spokespeople, between politicians across the, you know, between UK and India, to be tackling these issues head on. That is going to be how results emerge.
That's a wonderful idea. Of course, these collaborations must work, and we need to collaborate, all of us. And of course, I'm open to any kind of collaboration that may happen. And of course, on my own, I do keep doing a lot of videos and debunking the myths that these evangelicals, particularly Catholics, much less so, they go on spreading, because this myth is absolute bunkum. It's baloney, nothing more than that. So let's.
And I feel
yes, please.
And for my personal value, I think, is in helping the sort of the upper middle class Indians, Hindus, to sort of reconnect to their roots. You know, it seems very ironic that it should come from me, but if it's an effective means of achieving an end, which is to strengthen Hinduism in the upper middle class, then, you know, I'm doing everything I can to do that. And I do feel that is a really important sort of demographic to be targeting. When I look at, as my friends, my family in India that fall in that bracket, they are even more Western than the West, I find. They're, you know, they're trying to be even bigger, even sooner. And as I said, it becomes cringing for me to see this. And in many ways, it's just completely ludicrous at times. So, I mean, one of the key turning points for me, again, before deciding to speak out on social media, was that I'm trying to learn to speak Hindi. And we visited our family in India, and I was trying to speak Hindi with them. Okay, very basic Hindi, but just trying my best to, you know, practice. And they would refuse to speak to me at all, even though I'd come all the way to India and I hadn't seen them for, you know, a year or so. They said, if you're going to talk in Hindi, don't talk to us. And they just, you know, that was it. They didn't want to talk to me anymore. So it was in English or nothing. And it's just so absurd, so insane. You know, when I look at my friends, family who, you know, perhaps they're married to a Spanish person, you know, their family loves that they're trying to learn Spanish. And yet I come to India and it's like the most repulsive thing that I'm trying to learn Hindi. Yeah.
Actually, that is that colonial hangover, that loss of self-esteem, a loss of self-confidence that occurred over that 200 years of the Raj. And even before that, because the Mughal rule was quite brutal. And they made it a point to show the Indians their place. So I think that collective loss of self-esteem over what is called the transgenerational trauma, that I think is more reflected in the upper middle class families than the lower middle class and the lower class families. They still seem rooted and confident and full of self-esteem about themselves. but the upper middle class is the one that has got totally deracinated. And so I think you identified this problem beautifully from your own experience. So that's wonderful, this discussion. Now we got some questions, so we'll take these questions.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Okay, the questions will appear on the screen. Shivam Agarwal, what should be the dharmic response to Joshua project?
Absolutely, great question. So I feel information is going to be a really key part, getting the right messages out to Hindus about how to be resilient to these efforts. And so things like when Hindus say that Hinduism, that Hinduism is the wrong word for Sanatana Dharma. Again, I think we have to be a little bit careful, because at least in the UK and internationally, people understand what the word Hinduism is. They don't know what Sanatana Dharma is. So that can be a real issue when it comes to then understanding. We have a few parties internationally that are sympathetic to wanting to protect cultures and peoples and tribes. If you're not able to say, well, this is a Hindu, if it's not something they can even they even know exists, you don't even know Sanatana Dharma is, it's very difficult for them to feel protective of it. So I think using the word Hinduism at times is important. Be careful when we say that Hinduism isn't a religion. I completely understand where people are coming from, but again, I think we have to be a bit careful, because what I've noticed when I did a bit of research on church and conversion websites a few months ago is they use that as a tool to convert people by saying, well, you're not even believing in a religion, it's just a way of life. You know, it's just the way that you dress and the way you eat. It's not actually a religion. You should be part of a proper, when you want to be part of a proper religion. So I think a few changes in attitude to strengthen the Hindu response to these infiltrations is really key. Another is obviously then where the money from Joshua Project is coming from, you know, doing research to expose these people. Particularly, there are a few websites that I found where, like crowdfunding websites, where we need to be targeting them and exposing them, and trying to pull on political levers, perhaps, with some of the countries who are funding and allowing these projects to occur. So I believe Norway is a big country in funding a lot of the sort of Joshua activities. So political power on Norway to do something about this. So it's a multi-pronged approach, as I mentioned earlier, with this conversion issue. It's educating the West and making them see sense. It's strengthening Hindus and making them understand the lies that the Christian converters are bringing in, and how to respond to them, strengthen their the way that they bring up their children as Hindus. And then there's the political response, and there needs to be a concerted effort between the three.
Quite right. I mean, I'm glad you brought up Norway, because Norway has a particularly dark past as far as these conversion efforts are concerned. You remember the Sri Lankan conflict?
Yes.
It was entirely church inspired. And who were the people who were heavily behind that church effort? These were the Norwegians. And that is why every time there used to be some kind of a peace effort, Norway used to be there. That we need to remember. And okay, Norway, you brought out a good point. So thank you for that. And Tanmay Kulkarni is asking the next question. Which aspect of Hinduism keeps you attached at the deepest level of your soul?
Very beautiful question. Okay, thank you, Tanmay-ji. I think, so that keeps me attached at the deepest level, it's understanding now, appreciating my role in the universe. I guess it's like an understanding of my place. And obviously, I've seen some real benefits to that when it comes to just my confidence and my mental strength. But at a deeper level, it's just that sense of peace, I guess, sense of being at peace with the universe, with myself, understanding the attachment or the connection with everything in the universe. When I go for a walk now in the countryside, I always now smell the flowers. I watch the animals. I don't just march through thinking humans are superior to all of this and this is all here just for my benefit. I feel this attachment to the world, all of nature, to everything. So life just feels so much more beautiful now, so much more meaningful now. So at a deeper level, I'd say that is the crux of it.
Okay. Next one. Rudra, he's asking question in Hindi. In English, बहन जी का जयपुर डायलॉग में बहुत बहुत स्वागत है. आपको यहाँ देखकर बहुत खुशी की अनुभूति हो रही है. So he's welcoming you to Jaipur Dialogues. And okay, that's an observation. That's a welcome message.
Yeah, I've learned to read Hindi, but it still takes me a very long time. So it probably would have taken me 3 minutes to read that myself. So thank you.
So that happens. That happens when you're learning a foreign language. That's always a little difficult. I faced the same problem when I was learning Urdu. Okay, it's a very complicated script, and it's a very silly script actually. And so there came a situation where I could write more fluently than I could read.
Sure.
Now, of course, it's much better.
Okay. Yeah, no, as I'm learning Hindi, we're being very careful for me to learn Shubh Hindi.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good. Uniraido Sanjay ji, could you please invite Carolina Goswami ji, Rennie Lynn, and Melissa ji together in the podcast? Wonderful work being done by all of them. Okay, we will attempt it. Now we are going to have a Jaipur Dialogue Summit from 17th to 21st November, and I'll attempt it there. And okay, I'll have to get their contacts, of course, but I will attempt it in the Jaipur Dialogue Summit. So thank you, Arunji. No, sorry, this is by Arunji. Irony is parents themselves don't know the depth of Hinduism. It's a renaissance for a lot of us lately. Our education system needs reform to help here.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's quite amazing that, so I spoke in another session a few weeks ago about the generation gap. And the expectation there, obviously, was that people feel that the youngsters are being very westernized, and it's the parents, the strong Hindu parents, more steeped in their traditions, in the scriptures, that's where the conflict emerges. But my experience has been the other way around, in fact. I've seen many occasions where it's the younger generation who are very involved on social media. They are much more well-informed now, much stronger Hindus than their parents. And obviously that is actually the way around you would hope it to happen, because that does show that there is a future for Hinduism, that it can face all the terrible things, all the forces attacking it at the moment. So at least social media, I feel, has had a massive role in enabling that to happen. And when it comes to the education system, absolutely, obviously there is reform coming in, but I feel a lot more is needed. It's an excellent step about the language. I really, really welcome that, because I feel many Hindus, and even people who are strongly Hindutva, they have a blind spot when it comes to language. They'll say, oh, English, it's just like a calculator. It doesn't matter that you're using English instead of Hindi. It's just a calculator, it's just a tool. And that's just not true at all. When you think of a calculator, even, when you're doing calculations, there are so many different ways in which you could come to an answer. Then there's the decimal, the decimal system. And yet when you look at, the Roman numeral system, one of the reasons why actually the Roman Empire was able to be so successful was because after some time it adopted it was constrained initially because it was using this Roman numeral system, and that persisted through the Dark Ages, and perhaps was one of the reasons why the Dark Ages occurred. And yet when the decimal system came, there was this flourishing in the economy. And so the way in which you are approaching a problem or trying to communicate, it's so important, because there are systems that work very well and systems that don't work very well. And so obviously the Hindi and the native language systems, they are a way of thinking, they are a way of approaching solutions. And the English language and the Judeo-Christian framework from which that emerged, it emerged to be optimal for the Western, the UK context, for example. English from a Christian background, it's not the optimal system for Bharat. And in fact, there is an American study, a linguistic study, where they looked, I think it was in UP, they were looking at the frequency at which people in UP were speaking English. Were they just speaking it in official meetings at work, or were they also using it as the modus franca of communications at home, so all informal communications? And they found that people who were speaking English very frequently, so that was like their almost the tongue of their preference for all conversations, it actually the very process of speaking in English, using the English mechanics of the language, using the English vocabulary, it altered their social, political viewpoints. So it has real significant implications. It changes the way people think. It's not just a tool, it's actually changing the connections in your brain. So it's so important, the language issue. So that is one of the real key things I felt in the recent education reform that is a positive. I really hope it's enforced very well. But yes, much more needs to be done with the education reform, particularly correcting the history textbooks.
Quite right. Sanjeev Rai, the missionary target, lower middle class. I have my own business and came to know after 2 years that 2 of my employees were Christian. They didn't change their name. How can we stop this? Very
good question. So from your personal point, Sanjeev ji, my advice to you would be to just try and do what you can to infuse Hinduism in the workplace, in that case, then, to help them to connect to their Hindu traditions, to understand the scriptures, to celebrate the festivals, to just do whatever you can to help Hindus feel proud, feel strong, and to love Hinduism and all it has to offer for them, so that when a very tricky, a very clever conversion person comes along, that they have so much well-being in themselves and such a happiness as a Hindu that it would never even occur to them to want to change religion. Why would they? They're so happy as they are. So I feel just strengthening Hindu tradition, Hindu festivals is the main thing you can do.
Quite right. I mean, the tribal culture and the tribal way of worship survived, I don't know how many millennia, but it could not survive contact with just one generation of Christianity. This is the next question. I think very, very related to what I just said. How to bring back Northeast India to Hindu Dharma again?
Excellent question. And in fact, there's one little collaboration I'm trying to set up at the moment to tackle exactly this problem, to actually be putting out some podcasts specifically on the Northeast, because I know it is such a big, big problem. So I think the same goes. We have to be looking at this, trying to stop the Westerners coming in, the people bringing in the conversion in the first place. We need to strengthen the Hindu identity of those who are already Hindu, sit in that area, and to help them to let that spread back into beyond their own families, back into the community. And then there's the political level. And obviously in the Northeast, we have the terror aspect to be dealing with, the Christian terrorists, essentially. So there is, again, the political front to be being very strict on these groups. In fact, I remember reading a few months ago that one of the BJP governments up there, that they were almost like promoting Christianity, or they were enabling Christians from outside to be coming in. So all of these activities absolutely must stop. And it might be that we need some stronger central control up there, because some of the political parties up there are compromised. So yeah, a few options there, I guess, and actually we need to be doing all of them.
Right, right. Okay, Anubhav Tiwari is next. How many people do you see understanding Sanatana Dharma in West these days around you? What's the opinion of them generally? Are they willing to learn?
Excellent question, Anubhavji. So the word Sanatana Dharma, no, nobody knows the word, unless maybe they're ISKCON, they would know, but otherwise no. As I said, many people wouldn't even know what Hinduism is, Hindus are. In fact, my sense is that many people do, and this sounds terrible, they don't know the difference between a Hindu and a Muslim. They think they're the same, they think they're Muslims. And obviously nothing could be further from the truth. And I think that's partly because in the media, obviously when there are any terrorist attacks or anything, they'll say it was committed by Asians. They never specified that it was by Pakistani Muslims. So people know, look at Asia, Southeast Asia, and they see India as the main country there, and they get the concept very confused. What is a Muslim and what is not a Muslim, anything else. So understanding is very, very poor. I'm happy to see that there are a few efforts in schools to try and bring Hinduism onto the curriculum. So recently, so the exams you sit when you're 18, for some students who choose to study religious studies up to the age of 18, one exam board now, I think, compulsorily teaches about Hinduism and particularly ISKCON. So that's, it's a start. But I remember when I worked through the numbers, it worked out to something like 1,300 students a year. Like, it's pitiful, It's a start, but it's still pitiful. So understanding is very, very low. When it comes to opinion of, being willing to learn, I say it's certainly increasing. It might be that they might not understand that what I'm talking about is a Hindu concept that I'm trying to promote. It might be that when I'm talking about living more responsibly, being more environmentally friendly, vegetarianism, these concepts are really key, I feel, to getting people, Westerners' attention, because these are concepts that are really resonating in the West at the moment. You only have to look at the vegetarian food products market is absolutely exploding. And so these are real concepts where if people could understand, well, Hinduism, we've always known this to be the sustainable way to be living. That could be a real hook, I feel.
Okay, so we still have a lot of questions to go.
Okay.
So what I'll do is now I'll get into a rapid fire round mode.
Sure. Okay.
And so I'll ask questions quickly, and you can answer them in a few words. Ramakrishna Goldie, isn't it time that, like in the past, spreading message of Christ, Indian government should send messengers around the world to spread tenets of Hinduism?
Yes, absolutely. I actually agree with this. And obviously, many Hindus have felt pride in the fact that we don't convert. But I think in this day and age, we have to be considering clever ways to be doing this, not at all in the same way that the Christians are doing it, but ways to be spreading the message, the awareness of Hinduism, absolutely. And the Indian government has a role to be doing that, I feel, absolutely.
All right. Christian missionaries in India converting tribal Hindus. Yeah. Okay.
It's a very complicated situation, isn't it? And part of it is because under previous governments, the tribal Hindus have been so neglected, so maltreated. So when something comes along that looks better, they've latched at it, obviously, very quickly. So the work that Modi ji is doing to look after people living in poverty, to be protecting tribal people is really important, because until somebody has their belly full and they're living comfortably, it's too easy for them to then be pulled in a different direction, isn't it? So.
Right. Okay, next one. Indian elites are highly colonized. HRD and Culture Ministry failed to promote our dharma and culture. Is it a reason of deep-rooted colonial hangover? I think we discussed this just now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's on so many levels. It's a language issue, and unfortunately that I think it's being tackled a little bit, but needs so much more. It's empowering schools to be promoting Bharatiya subjects and things like learning Bharatanatyam dancing instead of ballet. I have there's a young child in India I know who's going to school there, and she got an award because she had learned how to cook Western food in an Indian school, and it's just so so crazy that had she learned how to cook Indian food, that wasn't one of the ways to get the awards, and it's just terrible. So on so many fronts, there needs to be change, and there needs to be this installation of pride among Hindus, and the government, I feel, has an important role to play. Normally, governments don't necessarily need to interfere in this sort of thing, but when there isn't a very united Hindu organization, we have many Hindu organizations in India, but when they're not all united, which unfortunately is not the case, then the government has to step in and fulfill that role. So the BJP does have an onus on them to do these things.
Next one, please. Like everything has an end, this Yogesh Saman, isn't it time for Hinduism to end as well? After all, one thing dies, it won't be born again. I think this is some kind of a nihilistic philosophy.
No, because Sanatana Dharma, the word is there, Sanatana, it's eternal. It will never end. It is the truth. The truth can't end. The truth is eternal. So yeah.
I'll just add to it, Mr. Suman. I don't know whether you're asking this question to test her. But, you must know that we are not just believers in cyclical time. We know that the time is cyclical and eternal. And there's no question of this dying out. It is only those people who say that time is finite and there is an end to this universe. It's for them to die out, not for us. Absolutely. Okay, next one. Lal Singh, why missionary in India use fake picture, won't sell Bible as a Pavitra Shastra? I found in all over India, they use same tools to do religious fraud. I'm from RSS and I work for Vanvasi Sangh.
Yeah. So the issue here comes from the core concept of Christianity, where your purpose in life is to reach heaven, but also to help other souls reach heaven. You have to convert. That is the purpose of your existence. So at the moment in the UK, as I mentioned, Christianity is absolutely dying out. There aren't any, you can't convert people anymore. Nobody's interested. So they look where they can go. They go to India. So that's their way to feel that their life has been worthwhile. They go to India and convert souls.
Okay, the churches are being, Omi Yadav, the churches are being run in the surroundings, Saket and Gurgaon. That's in the NCR. Is it not illegal? Well, I think this is more of an administrative question, so I can take this. And see whether it is illegal or not, this has to be investigated, whether they are built with permission or not. That's what you have to do. Okay, the next one. Correction, they're running churches in the houses and converting people. Is it illegal or not? That is absolutely illegal, obviously. Yeah, but you need to do more research and find out exactly what is going on, and then you can report. Once you report, then if the authorities don't respond, then you tell us. That's where our role comes in. But then you have to do the groundwork. Sneha Iyer. Will Britain ever really apologize for the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, Bengal famine caused by Churchill greed? Are these taught in UK schools?
Absolutely not. Nothing is taught about India at all, which is just so shocking when you look, Britain's history. India's been such a big part of that, but none of this is taught. And I was quite surprised in the recent Black Lives Matter movement. There were a few calls to the UK government to be revamping the history curriculum here in the UK, so that they're also encompassing the colonial aspects of Britain's history, but it was all focused on Africa. There was nothing about India that I could find anywhere. There is still this belief that Britain did India a favor, that it was like it gave them the train system, it gave them all of this, it gave them civility even, and when we know the truth is far the opposite. The caste system has just been such a terrible thing that Britain has left in India, created and then left in India, just so damaging even today. And we're not told any of that. The only perception, and I've had this actually from a few of my school friends, they feel genuinely that Britain did India a favor, that they came and they helped to reduce or weaken the existing caste system, which of course there was not. So everything that Britain did was good.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just wrong.
You're absolutely right. It was the Britons who created the caste system. Lord Risley, the people don't know that. And I've been telling them that the caste system is not Indian. It is totally British.
Absolutely. In fact, the word caste, it comes from to be outcast. And I read that the word outcast, it's been part of the English language and been part of the UK literature since the 12th century. That's where it came from. And from the Portuguese, casta, it comes from Europe. It's not anything to do with the Varna system. That is, a beautiful actual system from Hinduism. And one that really makes sense, is logical. They're completely different things.
Just to think of that slavery is actually sanctified and sanctioned in the Bible, in the scriptures, in the Gospels, and has actually been practiced under that insidious doctrine of discovery. And it was legal in the United States. The Civil War. It was illegal in the United States till the 19th century, also in Britain till the 18th century. So what are they talking about?
Even in the UK today, gypsies, they're termed to be outcasts. That's quite common language, that gypsies are deemed to be outcasts today in the UK. So yeah.
Okay, next one. Amit, most of Indian women like to dress in Western clothes. Can you please enlighten them the virtues of Indian attire as you do?
Well, firstly, isn't it just so much more beautiful? The colors are just exquisite. And I find very flattering, when you are wearing a sari, it's almost like women, they float, I find, as they're walking. And when you compare that to, in the UK, where they're wearing ripped jeans and all sorts of body parts are showing, it just looks so crass. It just really does not look good. It's not flattering at all. There's this strange conflict between empowering women, but at the same time degrading them to the point where they're showing all of this flesh and looking really bad, and you're shaking parts of their body. It's just not consistent at all. I mean, it's just very a great example of the confusion. One of the confusions there is in Western society, the role of women, that women have been so suppressed. So you have to empower them by allowing them to show lots of body flesh and to look really bad. And women empowerment is just such a paradox in the West, and it's just so sad to see India jumping on that bandwagon, because it doesn't apply at all. Women are already very empowered in Hinduism in India. So yeah, just please don't ape the West is my big key message from this whole talk.
Okay. Saurabh says religion is only one, while faiths are many. Do you agree? Short answer.
Okay, so there's a very a misconception around all religions being the same. It's just not true at all. On so many levels, Hinduism is so different from Christianity and Islam. As Sanjay Ji was saying at the beginning, he gave those 6 ways, sort of 6 characteristics or key aspects of Hinduism, of the cyclical existence, time rather than linear. They are completely the opposite. So religion, no, it's not only one at all.
Okay, next one. This is the last question for today. Can Jesus start a broken bus? I experienced an MP and then I opposed. Get based up. It's not a question, but a sarcasm. Okay, your sarcasm is well understood, and thank you for bringing it up. I think with that, we can end our question answer session. Thank you so much, Melissa ji. Your interaction has been most enlightening, and I'm sure that all those who have listened to you today will go back with an enhanced understanding of their own systems. I actually call them a spiritual system, Hinduism. And also, I think a lot of them would have recovered a lot of their self-esteem.
I hope so.
I think that's very important. Once we generate the self-esteem among people, I think they're gonna get connected and they get rooted, and they can then resist all these invasions and predatory practices. Thank you so much. Wonderful having you on Jaipur Dialogues. I hope we can keep having these interactions. I think in the end, you talked about a little bit about empowering women. I think one of the topics that we can have is on this feminism virus that is catching up. So that's something in the context of what we have, the position of women in Hinduism. I think that will be next sometime. Thank you so much, Melisaji. Wonderful having you. Please follow her on her Twitter handle. It's English_Bahen. It's spelled Bahen. Here it is on the screen, on the scroll. Thank you so much.
Dhanyavad. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sanjay ji. Thank you, Jaipur
Namaste.
Dialogue. Namaste. Namaste.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.